guys, this is Gurneet. In today's video, we are going to take a look at top 5 SQL interview questions which were asked by MAANG companies. We'll be taking a look at 5 problem statements and we'll be solving each of them one by one. So let's get started. Coming to our first problem statement, which is find a total time spent by each employee. So the problem statement says that we need to write an SQL query to calculate the total time in minutes spent by each employee on each day at the office. Now we have to take a note that within one day, an employee can enter and leave more than once. So an employee can come only once, but he or she can leave the office more than once. So the time spent in the office for a single entry, for a single employee will be out time minus the in time, right? And we have to return the result table in any order. So this is a employees table, and our table should look like employee ID, event day, in time, and out time. So these are the entries that there should be. So now let's understand this problem statement in our SQL server. Now let's understand this problem statement in our SQL. So as you can see that I've already created my table, and the syntax for that is create table employees. The employee ID, event day, in time, and out time are the columns with the corresponding data types with it. Then we have inserted our values into our employees. Now let's go ahead and check it. So when I execute, you can see that I have my values in my table as employee ID, event day, in time, and out time. Now, how are we going to find out the total time spent by each employee? So what I'm going to do, I'll write down select. So what I have to select, event day, event underscore day, as I can write down as day. Then I have to select employee ID. I'll write down employee ID, right? After that, now I have to calculate the total time spent. So I'll write down sum. Then in bracket, I will be mentioning the out time. Okay. Out underscore time. So this is my out time minus sum of in time, right? Then, so this is our total time. So I'll write down as total underscore time, right? So this is our total time. I can just, till this point it's clear. Then what I'll do, I have to mention the table name. So I'll write down from table employees, right? So you can see that it has given me from employees. Then I have to group by. So I'll write down group by employee ID, comma, then group by employee ID and the event day, right? Now let's just execute it and see whether how much. So now you can see that for the employee ID fund, we have 173 as total time on the day 28th. Then the second employee has the 30 as the total time. And then on the other days, like for the first employee on the day 3rd, he or she has 41 total time. For the second employee, I have day 9th as like the day 9th. Then we can see that the total time is 27, right? So I hope the first problem statement is clear. Now coming up to our second problem statement, which is daily leads and partners. So the problem statement says that we need to write an SQL query that will, for each date ID and make name, return the number of distinct lead IDs and distinct partner IDs. And we have to return the result in any order. So to solve this problem statement, we'll be using count and distinct functions in our query. And you can see that I have a table, daily sales, with the columns as date ID, make name, lead ID, and partner ID, right? So now let's go ahead and understand this problem statement in SQL Server. Now you can see that I've already created the table daily sales with the syntax by create table, table name, and the columns that I have included are date ID, make name, lead ID, and partner ID with the corresponding data types. And I've inserted values as well. So now let's go ahead and see how our table looks like. So let me just execute this. So now you can see that I have total 10 values in my table daily sales with the date ID, make name, lead ID, and the partner ID, right? So as I said that we need to find the daily leads and partners, right? So for that, we have to see that we have to use count and distinct functions, right? So what I'll do is I'll write down select, select, right? Hi, date ID. So I'll write down date. So I have to select the date ID, right? Then make name, make name, right? Okay, I'll just make name. Then our third column, which is now I have to select the count. So we have to like calculate the total number, right? Not the total, but we have to find out the number of, right? So in that case, we use count function. So I'll write down count, and then in my bracket, I will mention distinct because we want the unique values. In the problem statement also, it said that we have to find out the unique or distinct values, right? So distinct, I'll use the function distinct, and then I'll say underscore lead underscore ID, right? So this is my unique leads as unique leads, right? So these are my unique leads. Then I have to calculate, sorry, we have to find the partner IDs as well, right? So count, right? Bracket, then again distinct, and over here we'll write down partner ID. So I'll write down partner. So we have to find out the unique, right? So in that case, we are using distinct, and I am counting the unique partners. So I'll write on unique underscore partners, right? Till this part, I hope it's clear. Then what I'll do, we'll write down the from table name, which is daily sales. So let me just include it. And the last step is to group by. So I'll write down group by group by date ID, comma, make name, right? Make name, right? So let's just go ahead and execute it. So it will give us the unique leads. It will give me the date, name, and the in our lead ID and partner ID, it will give us the unique leads and unique partners, right? So if I execute it, you can see that for the date, this 7 December, you can see that the name is Honda and the unique leads were 3 and unique partners were 2, right? So in this manner, we have found the unique leads and unique partners, right? In the as per their dates and name, right? So daily leads and partners. So I hope the second problem statement is also clear. Now coming up to our third problem statement, which is fix names in a table. So the problem statement says that we need to write an SQL query to fix the names so that only the first character is in uppercase and the rest are lowercase. And we need to return the result ordered by user ID. Right. So I have a table. We have a table name users with the user ID and name as its columns. Right. So now let's go ahead and understand this problem statement in our SQL server. Now, first we create the table users. So I have already created the table with the user ID and name as my column with the associated data types. Now, I have also inserted the two values. So let's go ahead and check. So now you can see that I have name Alice and Bob in such a manner that the first index or the first letter is in small, is in like lowercase, while it's quite jumbled. But how we do we need it in our SQL query is that the problem statement says that we need to fetch uh, the first index or the first letter and convert it into uppercase, while the rest should be in lowercase. So now let's understand how are we going to do it. So we'll write down select, then we have to select the user ID, right? So I'll write down user underscore ID, right? And after that, we'll find out. Now, what we'll do is we'll concatenate. So what are we going to do is the logic we are using is first we will fetch our first letter and we will convert it into uppercase, right? And then we will divide our name into two substrings, right? In the first index, we'll convert it into uppercase and the rest we will convert it into lowercase, right? So I'll write down concat, right? And in my column, in my brackets, what I'll write down, first I will fetch the upper one, right? So upper, and again the columns. So my first index, so substring, right? And then in my index name, comma, 1, comma, 1, right? So this is my uppercase, the first index, right? After that, I'll write comma, then what we'll use? We will be using, okay, here we will have two brackets. Then after upper, I'll write down lowercase, again substring, substring. Then in my bracket, I will be writing down substring, then again name, comma. Now what I'll mention, second, because we will be continuing after the second index, right? So second, and then I'll mention the length of the name, right? And I will close the bracket, right? And then I'll write down as name, right? So this is my syntax for finding out. And then I'll mention the table name. So I'll write down from users, right? And they have said that we have to group by, right? Sorry, order by. So I'll write down order by user ID, right? So this is my whole query. So let's execute it and see if it's giving me the correct. So first take a look at the users table and you can see how the format is for the names. Then if I execute it, you can see that the first letter has been converted to uppercase while the rest are in the lowercase. So what I've done here is I've used concat. Concat first, the first step is to divide our names into using substring, right? And then I will convert the first part, the first letter to uppercase and the rest of the length of the name to my lowercase, right? And then I'll concatenate these two strings, which means that combine these two strings and then order by user ID, right? So I hope the third problem statement is also clear. Now coming up to our fourth problem statement, which is bank account summary. So the problem statement says that we need to write an SQL query to report the name and balance of the users with a balance which is higher than 10,000, right? Now, the balance of an account is equal to the sum of the amounts of all the transactions involving that account. So we have to return the result table ordered by user ID. So what I'll do is, so we have to create table users and a transactions table after that, and we have to solve this problem statement using those two tables. So let's understand this problem statement in SQL Server. Now you can see that I've already created the table users one because I already have a table named users in my database. So I've created a users one table with account and name as its columns. Then I've created another table transactions with transaction ID, account, amount and the transacted on. So let's first, and I've also inserted those values. So let's see those tables. So first the users table. So as you can see that I have account and the name, and in my transactions table, I have the transaction ID, amount, account, then the amount and the transacted on. So this is my transactions table, right? And we have to calculate the total sum. So we have to calculate the total amount which is higher. We have to give the number, name and the balance users with the amount which is higher than 10,000, right? So in my, you can see that. So how are we going to solve this? First, let's see the users table again. So I have Alice, Bob and Charlie. So we have to see that whose amount, total amount is greater than 10,000. So how are we going to solve this? We'll be writing down select, right? And then, so I have to find out distinct because we need a unique name, right? So distinct name, comma, then balance, name, comma, balance from. So we'll be using a subquery here. So let me just write down. So what I'll be doing here is from, then I'll write down again, select u dot name, right? I'll write down u dot name, comma, then I'll be writing down sum, sum of t dot amount. So I have to calculate the total amount from the transactions table, right? T dot amount, and then I will be partitioning it by name. So over partition by, so what I will be using u dot name. So I'll be partitioning by name as balance. So this is my balance, right? And then I'll write down from the table transactions, right? From the table transactions and as T, and then I'll be using a join, right? So I'll write down join users one, right, as U. Then on what basis are we joining? On T dot account is equals to U dot account. So we have the common attribute or column as account, and then I'll after that where, now comes the condition, which is the where balance is greater than 10,000, right? So let's just execute this. So now you can see that the total balance, which is greater than 10,000, was only with the name Alice, right? So I hope this part is clear. So I hope you can see. So I hope the bank account summary problem statement is also clear. Now coming up to our last problem statement, which is customer who visited but did not make any transaction. So the problem statement says that write an SQL query to find the IDs of the users who visited without making any transactions and the number of times they made these types of visits, and return the result table ordered by user ID, right? So we need to find the ID of the users who visited but did not make any transaction, and we have to find out how many times, like number of times they have made such visits without any transaction, right? So we have the table name visits with visit ID and the customer ID, and we'll have another table transactions, right? And we'll be using these two tables to solve this problem statement. So let's understand this using our SQL server. Now you can see that I have a table named visits and a transactions. Because we have already used a transactions table, I have named it transactions one, right? And I've filled out the values inside, inserted my values inside these two tables. So let's first see our visits table, and you can see that visit ID and we have a customer ID, right? And in my transactions table, I have a transaction ID, visit ID, and the amount, right? So we have to find out the users or the ID of the users who visited but did not make any transaction. So for that, what we have to do is we'll write down select, and we have to select the customer ID, customer ID, and then you can see that I have a customer ID in my visit, right? So from visits, I have my customer ID. Then I'll write down, now I have to count the number of times, right? So count and count every item, because we are using asterisk, so meaning that we have included all of my transactions. So count as count number and the transactions. So I'll write down trans, right? Then what I'll be doing is from table. So the table name is from visits, and we have to see now the condition that we need here is where. So I'll write down visit ID, visit ID not in. So I have to mention not in, and then I'll use the subquery select distinct, because we want the unique, right? So distinct visit ID in, sorry, from. So I'll tell you what is happening here is from transactions one, right? And we'll write down group by customer ID, right? So what is happening here is that what I've done is first I've selected the customer ID and count of all the transactions from my visits table. And then I have seen is what I've done here is that I have to see that the visit ID should not be present in the transaction. We need to find the users of the ID of the users whose visit ID is not present in the transactions table. So first I've just mentioned a query, select distinct visit ID from transaction. So it will give me all the unique IDs from the visit ID column from the transactions table. And then I've mentioned not. So when I've mentioned not, what it will do, it will give me the visit IDs of the people who did not make any transaction but have a visit ID, right? So if I execute this, you can see that customer ID 30, 54 and 96 did not make any count number of transactions. 1, 2. So how many times they have visited? 1, 2 and 1. 54 has visited twice but did not make any transactions. So the count is here is that how many times that the customer or anyone has visited but did not make any transaction, right? So that's why customer ID and count of everything to count number of trans or like how many visits, right, from the table. And then we have used not in because we have selected the IDs who did make a visit but did not make any transaction. So this is my result. So I hope the fifth problem statement is also clear. Thanks for watching.